the distinguished member of technical staff at Wipro. So thanks Abhi for joining us today, and over to you.
Thank you, Jayesh. Hi, good morning, all. So I see people still joining. It's okay. We will do quick recap of what we did in Masterclass 1. Okay. So those who are joining for the first time, this is about me. I'm an author, speaker, and blogger. I'm an open source contributor, and I'm working as DMTS in Wipro. Okay. Now, let's see. So what we did in first masterclass, right? So on the right side of this screen, you can see that we started with container, right? So why containers are required, and what is container image, and how do we store those images? How do we orchestrate containers, right? And that then we move to Kubernetes, right? So like why Kubernetes came into existence, what is the architecture of it, how various components work in Kubernetes, right? And then who are the providers for managed Kubernetes services, right? And then very specifically, we looked at AWS offerings, right? Remember ECS, EKS, those two offering mainly, right? And ECR is also there for registry. So we did a deep dive on EKS, right? Like how do we provision EKS cluster, how do we use it, and then uh, next part was Kubernetes building block. Now that's where we are going to start now in Kubernetes building block. So what do you mean by Kubernetes building block? So these are resources in Kubernetes, or these are objects in Kubernetes, and these are not the only ones, right? There are many more, but these are the most commonly used building blocks. So with these uh, you can create your application, right? These are the most important ones. And we will also see how various application lifecycle management activities are performed, right? So how do we do application deployment? How do we do rollback, upgrade, self-healing, and scaling? Okay, so let's move on. So if you're new to Kubernetes, the very common question that everyone has it, like, how do I learn Kubernetes? So I was trying to find out that formula, and I concluded that you need three things for learning Kubernetes, right? First, Linux essentials, because without Linux, if you're coming from Windows background, or if you haven't worked on Linux, uh, it is very important for you to first grasp the basics of it. I mean, you don't need to be Linux admin, but yeah, it's good to know basic Linux command. Then next is YAML, because YAML is the way you write Kubernetes manifest, right? Mostly YAML, but you can write in JSON also. Then comes Kubernetes concept. So Kubernetes itself, basically. So YAML and Linux are not Kubernetes, but uh, they are essential, right, to run Kubernetes thing. And then practice. Now practice is shown very small in a small box, right? But it is the major part. Okay, so theoretical reading of key tests doesn't help, right? You have to do a lot of practice, and it is rather easy actually. So I'll show you today. Our objective is to do lots of hands-on and understand how do we run it on our laptop and all, right? So where do we practice Kubernetes? Various ways are there, right? The most simple way is katacoda.com, and we will be using that primarily today. Here you don't need to do any setup at all, right? You just run it and you're there. Then second option is if you have a machine, laptop, desktop with virtualization or nested virtualization enabled, then you can run VirtualBox, and on top of VirtualBox you can run any Linux box, right? And then you can install Minikube. I'm referring Minikube again and again. I'll tell you what is Minikube. Okay. The next is if you already have any Linux box, you can definitely use it. Right? You don't need to bother about VirtualBox and all.
Hi.
Yeah. Then
So you'll be sharing this PPT and
yes. Yeah. So not only presentation, I will be using two, three more resources, right? Like I'll have command reference, I will have demo related commands, everything will be shared. So last time also it was shared after the session, and you will see you'll get the recording also, right? So it is being
okay,
recorded. You'll get the recording also uploaded.
okay,
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So and then you can use any EC2 free tier instance. If you have AWS account, launch any EC2 free tier machine and then install Minikube there. I'll tell you how to install Minikube. Okay, and if you don't want to get into Minikube way, you want to run the real Kubernetes cluster, then you also have option of using AWS EKS. But I would not advise you unless you have some uh, I don't know, official subscription or something, because it is charge hourly basis, and an hourly charge is like 10 cents per hour. That is for cluster, okay. But then they also charge you for EC2 instances which are working as worker node, right? So three worker node will be running. So three worker node plus 10 cents for cluster plus your NAT gateway, which is the most uh, I would say costly component, and then you will be charged for data in out. So overall, it is quite costly. I mean, if you run it for 1 or 2 days, you have to pay like 300, 400 rupees per day. Okay, so why to waste if you can learn everything using Minikube? Why to waste money in EKS, right? But EKS will not give you anything different. I mean, once you are running kubectl command, you can run all the commands. Only thing is there are some basic difference between Minikube and full-fledged cluster. So let's see what is Minikube. Let me show you what is Minikube. So I mentioned Katacoda, right? So how do you launch Katacoda? You go to Google, type katacoda.com, okay? And in Katacoda, it says learn new technology right in your browser. So many people might have seen it. If not, then just go to free courses, and there are so many free courses where you just need to click on the commands and they execute, and you can see how it is working. So let's say Kubernetes introduction. So if I say start course, okay, then there are many options. So I just say launch a single node cluster. I'll say start scenario, okay, and when you do this, it says start scenario. You don't need anything. I mean, you don't need to log in, sign up, or nothing. That's it. So your terminal is open, and you see this button, right? So you click on this button and the command is copied and executed. It is that simple. So it says you are running Minikube version 1.8.1. The first thing you have to do you have to start Minikube, right? So you start like this. Okay. It is running on Ubuntu. Okay, then either you can, if you're doing practice using these courses, you can do continue and it will show you some more commands, but we are not doing that way. So see this, I hope you can see it. So it is launching Minikube. What it is doing, it is creating one node cluster actually, right? So preparing Kubernetes 1.17.3 on Docker this. Okay, so it is setting up Kubernetes. It hardly takes any time, right? And now it says it is up and running. And if you see kubectl get nodes, right, it says there is only one node called Minikube, okay, and role is master, and that's it. It is up and running. Now it shows ready, right? Within 24 seconds, it came up. So this is the place you can do most of your practical hands-on. Okay. Now coming back to this. Now you can also install Minikube on any EC2 instance like the one I'm showing here. So what you need to do here is, okay, so once you log into your instance, uh, the first thing you have to do is download Minikube. So these commands, you don't need to worry. I am going to share these commands. Okay, how we do it? First, you have to install Docker. If it is CentOS based EC2, then yum install. Otherwise, app apt-get, right, in Ubuntu. Install Docker, start Docker, and check whether Docker is running. Next is Minikube installation. So you can refer to this document, right? And this document tells only about 3 commands. So you get the file, okay? And in fact, we were using these kind of steps in last masterclass. Several times we use that, right? And change the mode, make it executable, create a new directory, and run this install Minikube, right? So this install Minikube will take care of copying Minikube to your bin folder so that you can run Minikube without going to the right folder. And then next is Minikube start. So it also gives you an option of which version you want to use with Minikube, right? So let's say I'm saying take 1.17.3. Okay, and then there is driver option based on which hypervisor you're using or VM you're using. So there are 2-3 options there. So if you're running on VM, just say driver equal to none, and then you start your Minikube. Okay, so what I did, see, I ran this curl command. Okay, then if you do simple Minikube start, okay, it will give you some error like it should not run with root and you need to give driver equal to none and all, right? So once you give it with proper Kubernetes version, so it will download these things. It will download kubelet, kubeadm. Okay, it will take maybe 2-3 minutes. Okay, and then what it says, see, read the last line. So it does not bring kubectl on its own. So it says for best result install kubectl. Okay, so kubectl is not installed, and kubectl is the utility that is essential for running any cluster management commands, right? If you see Minikube status, you will see, yeah, it is all running, right? And if you run kubectl, it will say no command not found because it is not installed. You will not find it, right? Now, how do we get it? Again, one curl command. So go here. We also installed kubectl last time, right? So download this, and these commands are taken from Kubernetes official documentation. You can refer to that. In fact, this file will also be shared with you. So you download, right? You change the mode, move the binary to this, and done, right? So you download. It is very small file, just 42 MB. Change execution mode, copy, and then you're run. You're ready. So it is saying you're running instance 1, which is ready, and this is the version. Okay. So both ways I have shown. Hope this is clear. So either Katacoda, this is also free. You just need one internet connection so that you can keep on running these commands. Okay. Or if you don't want to use Katacoda, because if you don't, if you're not active on this for some time, it will log you off. It will close that connection, right? That will not happen here, right? This is your personal kind of thing. So you can keep on running this. So whatever way. Okay, so this is how you start Kubernetes learning part. Hope this is clear. Let me quickly see if there are any questions so far. So you can paste the questions in chat. Okay, no question till now. Let's move on. Now there are two utilities. Whenever we talk about Kubernetes, there are primarily two utilities that we talk about, right? So one is kubeadm, other one is kubectl. So what is kubeadm? It is for provisioning cluster. Okay, so again, kubeadm is not the only way to provision Kubernetes cluster. Okay, and so there is question: is it better to set up locally or use in cloud? Up to you, because see, there are some practical challenges in setting it up locally. Number one, you need to have nested virtualization enabled, right? And it is not supported in any OS below Windows 8, right? So like my personal laptop has Windows 7, so I can't do VirtualBox, right? I can't run any VM on that. That is one challenge. Second is, if you are using some official laptop and all, then obviously you will not have admin privilege to change virtualization mode. So that is problem number two. So that is, these are the reason I prefer to use Katacoda, or best is EC2 instance or any instance for that matter. I mean, if you are part of, let's say, GCP or Azure, wherever you have free subscription, just get one VM. I mean, that's all that you require is one VM, right? And EC2, I mean, AWS also gives 1 year free subscription, right? So that is also one of the best option. And free tier is not very costly, right? You can run it for whole month, and even then it will be uh, freely available. You don't need to pay. Okay, so I was telling about KubeADM. So KubeADM is not the only way. So in fact, we are not covering how to install Kubernetes cluster. That is quite a big topic. But there are two, three ways, right? One is KubeADM. One is the hard way. Kubernetes, the hard way, where you create all the services and you do all the steps that you have to do one by one, and those steps are automated in KubeADM. So it's like next easy option from Kubernetes, the hard way is KubeADM. Third easy option is managed service provider, where you have seen that, right? You just run one command, EKS CT create cluster, and your cluster is created, right? It is totally automated. Okay, and now let's move on to kubectl. What is kubectl? It's a command line utility. You have seen already, right? Kubectl. So it is used for managing Kubernetes cluster or resources, whatever. So many things you can do. Next, it works. So kubectl requires a config file, right? Which is called kubeconfig file. And location of kubeconfig file is $home/.kube. That is the default location, but you can give any other location and put that in kubeconfig variable. Export that and put that location, it will pick. Okay, or you can use -- kubeconfig flag. So whenever you're running kubectl, you say any command -- kubeconfig. Now you don't want to give that again and again. That's why you either export the variable or you put the kubeconfig in default location where it should be. Now all the kube. Now before getting into command syntax, there are two ways to run commands in kubectl. One is imperative way, other one is declarative way. What is imperative? Imperative is like single liner, right? You say kubectl run nginx, one single line and you're done, right? Declarative way means you create a manifest file which will be YAML, JSON, whatever, and you call that file either directly using create-f, or you can also run directly those commands. I'll show you how. Okay, so that is declarative, where you give detailed syntax of it. Now the problem or the benefit of imperative versus declarative give you all the flexibility, right? There are hundreds of options in every single thing, right? So you can use those options, you can understand those options. So it is always recommended to go with a declarative way in the beginning so that you understand how things are happening, right? But once you are comfortable, you can as well run imperative way, right? And again, this is not as simple as this. If you want to give more option, right here, if you want to specify port, specify name of image, then you have to keep on adding these flags, like kubectl run nginx -- image equal to this -- this. I mean, and you keep on expanding it, right? So that also becomes complicated. But yeah, there are two ways, right? So you can do that. Now if you run kubectl command, the common syntax is you run a command. So command is like get, create, delete. These are commands, right? And then you mention type. So where you want to run. So if you want to say kubectl delete, what do you want to delete? You want to delete a pod, then type will be pod. If you want to delete a service, type will be service, and so on. Okay, then when you say delete pod, then you have to give the pod name. So next is name, right? And then there is a flag. So flag could be like if you want to mention namespace, then your flag will be namespace equal to this, right? So those are flags. So all kubectl command run in this fashion. And the beauty of this is that you can run it in three different ways. So you can run it in singular way, plural way, or abbreviated way. Now what does it mean? So if you go here, okay, so right now I've executed a command kubectl get pod, right? Or let's say better would be get namespace, so that we see some output. Now it says it is showing some output, right? Now same command, so this is singular way. I can run like this. same output, right? Third way, so singular way, plural way, and shortcut, NS, right? Similarly, you can do that for pod. So you can write pod, you can write pods, or you can write PO also, same thing. Okay. And if you want to avoid typing kubectl again and again, you can again create one alias like this. Okay. And it becomes so simple, right? You can just say k get PO. Even you can write alias for entire command also, but this is one simple way. Okay, so kubectl, hope this is clear. Now the very important question, okay, there is one question, let me see. SSH into Minikube will not accept many commands like Linux command or Docker command. That's true. I mean, Minikube is not full-fledged Kubernetes, right? So of course you can't install a Kubernetes cluster or in fact, I think Minikube now supports Docker also. You can find out, but it has restriction. And objective of Minikube is not to run full-fledged cluster. So if you do Google and try finding out what is Minikube, then it's a tool that makes it easy to run Kubernetes locally, right? Now you will not run single node cluster where you're scheduling pods in master node itself. That itself is wrong practice, right? But then you're not doing it for production. You're just running it for learning, right? So it installed Kubernetes locally on your workstation or personal laptop, and it's a development kind of setup. Fine. So that is what Minikube is. Hope it is clear. And we are seeing Minikube, right? So I don't think so. Yes, Minikube supports Docker. Yeah, that's right. Okie dokie, let's move on. So where we were. So now next question is, why do we need to have all these objects, right? I mentioned that in today's session, we are going to learn namespace, pod, replica set. Now the question is, there are so many new names. If you're not familiar with Kubernetes, there are so many new names, right? And you will wonder, like, why do we need all this, right? And what is the relationship of these building blocks or these resources with my application deployment, right? So I've tried to do one mapping. So this is the mapping of your object type relevance to application need. So when you have an application, right, you want to run that application. Where will you run that application? You will run inside pod. That's why you need pod. Your application goes inside pod. If you want to scale your application, suppose you are running with 2 users and your one pod is sufficient, but if you are running with 2000 users and you want to scale, you want to have more pods running, right? You want to run 5 pods. Then how do you do that? You use replica set. Now, replica set is not the way we do it. We typically do it with the help of deployment because deployment is next level concept. Now, how do you, we will see replica set deployment in detail, so don't bother right now. Now, how do we do application deployment, right? I want to roll out my application, which consists of different pods, replica set, images. And how do I do that? You need to use Kubernetes object called deployment. Okay. If you want to do application upgrade or rollback, how do you do that? Again, you can do with the help of deployment. And that's where deployment differs from replica set. So it also allows you to do application upgrade, rollback and all. Now I want to expose that application. See, container, whatever you run in container, that is not visible even outside the cluster, right, by default. So how do you make your application available to, let's say, internet, available on internet outside cluster, right? Then you use a concept called service. Okay. So service is for intra-pod communication and exposing your pod's port to external world, right? So that is the need of service. Now there are applications which are stateful. So there are two types of application, right? One is stateless application, where application doesn't maintain the state, right? You let's say if you're running a stateless application like web server, then it doesn't matter if you delete that pod and create a new pod. with same configuration, it will run. There is no data stored anywhere for that web server. But if it is database, let's say, then if you delete database pod, then your data will also be gone, right? And then that category is called stateful application. Now, stateful application, if you want to run, then order of application component also matter, right? If you start web tier, but if don't start database tier, web tier will start failing. It will say, I don't see any database. So you need to maintain some order, right? Where you say, okay, start database first, start middle tier next, start web tier last, and so on. So that all those things are done using a stateful set. So question is, can pod communicate to each other without service? Yes, they can. They can communicate using pod IP, right? But the problem with pod IP is that pod IP is not fixed. It is ephemeral. So if you create a pod, it will get one pod IP. You delete the pod, create one more pod, same pod again. You'll get different IP. Now, if you're using IP to communicate, your communication will fail, right? You have to keep on changing the IP. And pod's nature itself is like that, where you should not bother which IP it was running and where it was running and all that. Right? That's why we need service. We'll cover these concepts in detail. I'm just trying to show you the mapping, right? So that the bigger picture is clear to you. Now, for running an application, let's say you are running one two-tier application. Okay. Now, you will have some environment variable, right? That you might have different database for different environment. Now, where do you keep those variables? You can't, rather you can put inside pod, but the problem is then you have to create three different pods, right? For three different, or rather you can put inside the images, but you have to keep three different images, one for development, one for maybe pre-prod, one for prod. That doesn't make sense. So better keep those variable outside. And where do you save those variable? Save it in config map. Again, one of the object type in Kubernetes. Now you don't want to, config map is like plain text kind of variable saving option. You don't want to save your password like that. So then you use secrets. Next is running batch jobs. So there might be some batch job. You can run batch jobs using a Kubernetes object jobs. Batch jobs, what will happen? So whatever pod is running for your job, that will end. Once its job is done, pod will end. Pod will terminate. Now, if you want to run some scheduled job, let's say I want to run you might have seen several application, right? Where one background service should keep on running, then only application works. Now, how do you run background service? Then you have to have cron jobs kind of thing, where you even get the option of scheduling the way you schedule your jobs in Unix, right? Those 5 options, star, star, star. You can mention date, time, year, month, everything. So cron jobs is another object, very useful one. Then if you want to do load balancing, traffic routing, right, you can use ingress. Then there is this, now you will, so till now we haven't talked about storage, but your stateful application will require storage. How do you give storage to your pod, right? Then there is concept of persistent volume and persistent volume claim, right? So that's where these objects come into picture. Application self-healing. Now, there is no object mapping to this, but this is the nature of controllers that run in behind, right? So let's say replica set. It will take care of all kind of self-healing. So if one pod is terminated, deleted for some reason, it will ensure that uh, again you have the same number of desired. So you will define like I want my 3 replicas to be there. Then 3 replica will again be there all the time. So if one is killed, it will again create one more. Now, you might have some special type of application like monitoring or logging. How do you don't want to use this traditional way, uh, like pod way. You want monitoring to be running all the time, given priority, starting in the beginning itself, so that everything is monitored and so on. Right? So you use monitoring there. You use a daemon set kind of object type. Okay, then comes version handling. So you can use label selector, application environment separation, How do you do that application environment separation? You can use namespace. Now this is covering the objects that I'm going to explain in today's masterclass, right? So as I said, there are not only 10 objects, there are more than, I would say, 30-40 objects, and it's not possible to cover in 1.5 hours. So just focusing on the meaningful one. Okay, so deep dive into most commonly used, because now you have a lot of question on these objects. Let's see these objects first. Let's see it how they work, and then some of your questions will already be answered once we see it. Okay, so we are going to cover namespace, followed by pod, replica set, deployment services, PV, PVC, config map, secrets, stateful, and demonstrate. Okay, what is namespace? Namespace is again common concept, right? In various other programming language and other places also there is namespace concept. So why do we need namespace? We divide cluster resources based on namespace. So let's say in your organization you have many departments. Again, this is one of the examples. This is not the always way. That's not the way to divide cluster resources. You might have one cluster for one department. Nobody is stopping you, but just giving an example. So if you have, let's say, two departments or two different team, development team and production team, and you have only one cluster, then how do you ensure that one guy doesn't interfere with other? So if you don't use namespace, everything will go into default, right? So there are chances that someone will delete someone else thing or someone will mess up other things. So better you create different namespace for those teams. So that is the purpose. And you can also, the best part about namespace is you can also assign resource quota. So you can say, okay, for this namespace, these many pods can be created. You can have this much of CPU, this much of memory max. Okay, so you can do entire resource quota thing at namespace level. Then namespace should be unique, right? So all the objects that you create inside namespace, they should be unique within namespace, but not across. So I have two namespace. Let's say my prod namespace and dev namespace. I can create same AWS pod in both the namespaces, no issues. Again, not a good practice, but I can create because they are different. So they are logically separated. I mean, one namespace doesn't see what is there in other namespace. It's like that. Now, every single Kubernetes resource should only be in one namespace, right? And it is good for handling multi-tenancy. There are some commands. Let me show you how those commands are executed. So you can see that. So you can say now we have created an alias for kubectl. So we are just saying k get namespaces. By default, there will be 4 namespaces. Again, this thing will vary depending on where you are running this Kubernetes, what kind of Kubernetes you're running, right? So if you run this in OpenShift, you will find some 20 namespaces. If you run it in EKS, you will find different. If you're running it on Minikube, you'll find different. But yeah, default will always be there, and kube system will always be there, even kube public, right? So these you will not see kube node lease also in some places, right? So this is, and I have already also shown that you can run it in 3 ways: namespace, nameis, ns, whatever. Now creation of namespace is very simple. Kubectl, again I'm using imperative way, create namespace. Okay, and you need to give the name of it. So let's call it AWS you sorry, just a minute. Let's call it AWS demo. Done. Okay, it's that simple. So you have this namespace now. Now if I want to, how do I refer this namespace? So if I want to create a pod, let's say I think we can go to pod little later once we understand the pod concept. Okay, what all command you can run? So you can run get namespace, create namespace, you can describe, right? And in describe you can give namespace. Now this is very good command. This is very good in troubleshooting also. So this is some copy paste error. Okay, so get all is nice command, right? It will give you all the object, all the, see if I run like this, it is just telling what is running, what all objects are running in my default table, default namespace. If I want to run it for all namespaces, you can run it all, but that will be like very uh, so. I mean, since it is Minikube, we are seeing only this much. But if you run it in real Kubernetes cluster, you will see a lot of things here. Okay, so what it's showing that these are all the objects that are running in my entire cluster. So it is giving me all the pods that are running, all the services which are created, all, what is this? Daemon set, deployment, replica set, everything is given. Right? So get all, very nice command. Okay, let's move on. Nested namespace not allowed, right? So you cannot create namespace inside namespace. Okay, now how do you set namespace? Now you don't want to give namespace again and again, right? It is very cumbersome exercise, right? So every time, let's say you have to work on namespace AWS demo, you have to keep on adding dash dash namespace equal to AWS demo in all the commands if you want to do it there. Or you can use namespace inside your declarative manifest. You say, okay, my pod is this and my namespace is this. Okay, that also you can do. Or simple way is just set the context. So kubectl config set context. Okay, and just say current and namespace equal to whatever you want to mention. Okay. It is never a good practice to use default. I have already explained. If you want to refer some object which are like in different namespace, you can just give service name dot namespace name. Okay, you can do like this. Now, if you want to avoid this switching of namespace manually again and again, you can use this free tool kubeines. Okay, quiz time. How many namespace should be created in any production environment? 2, 10, 0, it depends. One answer 2, D. One answer depends. Okay, so answer is it depends, right? You cannot define it. See, if depends, it depends why. Uh, it depends why, because in Minikube, like, right, if I'm running a Minikube, I can run even without any namespace. Default is good enough for me, right? That is what we are going to do today. So 0 is the answer for that case. Now, if there are only 2 environment and I just bother about only 2 environment, sharing my cluster with only 2 set of people, 2 is good enough. But if it is very big cluster, let's say if I purchased EKS and I made it, let's say, good 5 node cluster and all, so that it is all fully highly available and all. So then I will try to maximize the option, right? Maximize the uses of it. I might create 10 different namespace, give it to 10 different people and let them run. I mean, 10 is just a random number and all these are random number. So answer is it depends on use case. Now, very interesting question is all Kubernetes objects are inside namespace. True, false, only 2 options. So one is saying true. Well, okay, so maximum people are saying A, but answer is B. So there are many objects which are not there in namespace. So object itself are not in namespace. You get my point. So you create a deployment, right? Deployment is one object. You create, let's say, a temp one application deployment you create. Now that will go inside the namespace, but the deployment object or replica set object, that is not in any namespace, right? So the Kubernetes internal objects, they are not inside any namespace, and there are many other things which are not inside namespaces. So it is false. Okay, so namespace was the simplest concept. Let's move on. Pod. Now, if you understand pod, I think you understand half of the things, because this is the crux of the matter. This is the most important concept. Now, why it is called pod? Pod, if you do Google search on pod, pod is a collection of, not collection, group of friendly whales. Okay, so group of whales is called pod. So they live together and they share things, right? And that's why they are called friendly whale, and they are like group of whales is called pod. Now, what is whale here? Whale is nothing but a container here, right? So group of containers is called pod. Though definition says group of container is pod, but in real life, most of the time you will have just one pod having just one container. Okay, most of the time. But there is another but there. Multi-container pod also exists. So it's not a fixed rule that you have to have one-to-one mapping. You can always have more than one container. In what cases you will have more than one container? What are the different patterns? So multi-container, there are three patterns. One is sidecar pattern, right? One is ambassador pattern, and another one is adapter pattern. You can do some reading around those patterns. Okay, and I mean, in certain cases, multi-container pod helps. Right? And what is pod? So pod acts like host for given application. So pod will have its own IP, it will have its own storage. So like the virtual machine, right? Virtual machine, if you're running inside a virtual machine, it looks like you're running on its own host, right? It will have everything independent. It will have its own set of ports also, right? So, and the process that you run inside pod is not, it's separated from the process that runs on the host itself, where you are installing Kubernetes and all. Of course, you can see that process, but the process ID will be different. So pod is like a complete host. You manage the port of that pod, you manage the IP of the pod. So your uh, uh, pod is like a boundary for entire component that you are deploying. So now the next question is, when I talk in terms of application, is it like just one pod I have to create for one application or more? So in fact, that is my quiz question. So for one application, how many pod I need to create? One or many? Or third option could be C, I mean, one or many both, right? Can I create one application with just one pod? Many people are saying many, but answer is yes. You can create your entire application with one pod also. Bad design, maybe bad design, maybe right design. So I'll give you example of both. So if you have simple web application which is serving a static file, okay, hello world, nothing else. You don't need many container, right? You need just one container, like uh, whatever you see on the right side, right? So your application is nothing but just one container, and you are happy. You can publish this container to entire world, and you can write in Nginx, you can write whatever hello world you want to write, and it will be published. Now, uh, so that is one. Now, this is one tier, simplest of all, but that is not the real example of application, right? In real example of application, you will have more than one tier, right? So how do you define, rather the question is how many pods you should create. So pod are nothing but synonym of microservice. So the answer is how many microservices you need in your cloud native application. That is the answer. So I mean, it entirely depends on application. If it is complicated application, very complex application, there might be maybe 10 microservices also, depends, right? And if you're starting your microservices journey, you might just start with two. You can further divide, keep on dividing, right? So someone said, yeah, that is correct answer. You start with two, you start further dividing, I mean, based on your application logic and all that, right? So how many pod you need, that answer is clear. Now on the right side, I am showing you one manifest of pod. Again, this does not cover all the parameters, all the option that is possible in any pod creation. Those are the basic ones. So what are those option? All kind of YAML file, as I was telling in last master class, will have four components. Okay, first is API version, second is kind, third is metadata, fourth is spec. These are four essential components. Sometimes spec is replaced by data and all, like in config map it is called data, but yeah, these are four essential components. API version 1, v1, kind. So kind is like what we are trying to create. We are creating pod, and it is case sensitive, and it is indentation sensitive also. YAML is very bad in that. So the way you are you are putting your indentation, that also determines what consists what, right? So let's say container, one is name Nginx. Now you want to create multi-container, then you just copy paste one more and name and put whatever. Let's say Nginx monitoring, and image is something different and port is something different. You can do that. So uh, I would say, yeah, as I said in the beginning, you need to know a little bit of YAML, then you can grasp these concepts very easily. But yeah, very high level, four different things. Now, for any object that you create, you have to give some name, right? So I'm giving AWS pod, and I'm giving one label so that I can search for this pod. So I'm creating uh, so many pod. How do I uniquely identify this AWS pod? What is the purpose of this pod? So this guy is serving web tier, right? So you can have as many tags, as many tag is nothing but label, right? As many tag you want to have, right? And on which port this container should be running. So I'm just saying run it on 80. I'm giving container name also. So there is a pod name and there is a container name, right? And why container name is required? If you have more than one container, how do you uniquely reference one container? Suppose you want to check the logs of second container. You have to give container name, right? So you have container name as well as pod name. Image, you know, right? So last time I was telling, right, container are nothing but running version of image, right? So Nginx is the image, and I'm running that image as Nginx. I can call, so nothing is hard coded here. Okay, you can change this name, this label, this port. Only the image is fixed. If you want to use Nginx, you have to give Nginx, and again Nginx comes in different flavors, right? So let's run some commands and see how it looks. Okay, so what we are going to do, whatever command I have shown, see there are two ways to run this command. Either you can save this command in some uh, file. Let's say I'm creating a file called poddefinition.yaml, right? So I've created a new file. I'm copy pasting this content. So if I want to do it this way, I can do it this way. Or if you want to do little differently, the way I was doing, you don't need to create this file. Then you can directly run by just copy pasting this cat eof. This is again Unix trick, right? So whatever you want to run, put it between eof and just run. Okay, dokie. So I've created a file, right? Now, how do I use that file? I have a shortcut K, or I can use kubectl 8 minus F. So I'm saying create object, F is for file. So which file I want to use? This file. Okay. It says pod AWS dash pod created. Now let's see. It says running. Now there could be many status of pod, right? And the status that we want to see is running. Initially, it will show container creating. So it will pull the image. It will basically, if you're pulling the image from public registry and if it is little big, it will keep on showing that container creating for some time. And then it will go into container running. Right, so this pod is running now. Let's run some more commands. So we have created this pod. We have checked the status, right? I want to see the IP of this pod. How do I see? You just see pod and you put a flag. So minus O wide, O for option, wide for wider output. I want to see more fields, right? So there is a short thing also. So minus O short also you can mention what it says. So short works in certain, I mean, not, I think it doesn't work for all, but yeah, I have used short also. Okay, so we were checking for pod IP, right? So this is a pod IP. Okay, why I was saying, if you create a pod, it gets a unique pod IP, and you can define this pod IP range also. When you create a cluster, you can define what should be the range of my IP for pod, what should be range of my IP for services. Okay. Now, if I delete this pod, how do I delete? I just say k delete pod. Okay, what is the name? This is my name. Remember, I'm not giving any namespace because it is running in default namespace. Okay, pod deleted. Now let's create the same pod again with this way. Okay, I haven't created any file. It says pod created. Okay, so it has given the same IP, but it is not mandatory to give same IP. It is not necessary you will get the same IP. Okay, it will keep on rotating the IP. Okay, that's why we don't use it. Now, various commands. So you have seen how to check the IP. How do we see where the application is running? So whatever IP you have got, right? So you can run this command on this curl. So you say curl and pod IP colon 80. So curl, because our container is running on port 80, right? That's why we are giving 80. So if you see this page, welcome to Nginx, but means you're getting some HTML output, right? So that means this application is running on port 80. This is running fine. Now, this is the default index.html of that, right? In any HTML, any web browser, web server, you have some default way, right? So this is a default page. Now, I want to change this default page to something meaningful. What I can do? So we can log inside pod. How do we log in? How do we log in? We just run kubectl. So whenever I type k, you assume it is kubectl because that is shortcut. K, okay, exec it inside this, and what I want to run? I want to run a shell prompt there. So you are inside AWS pod and you are running with, so whatever ls command you're running, this is running inside the pod. Okay, can see that? This is not your host, this is the pod. Now suppose I want to, so the simple way is whenever you're running any application and if you're not finding the output here, you can always run it inside the pod first, you know, just to see. See, our IP is not 18, our IP is 17, 17.0.4. So you can first check whether it is running from there. Now curl is not coming by default in Minikube, that's why it is not showing, but otherwise this will also show the outcome. Next is now if I quickly change this, so I'm changing index.html, right, to hello all. I've changed it, right? Now curl is not installed there, so I'll come out and I will run that command here, right? So you're getting hello all, right? So your application is running, application is of type web server, and it is running on port 80 and it is flashing a message hello all, right? So this is the simplest kind of application. Okay, so I think you have got some understanding of pod, and now we will see how all the things are linked to pod. Okay, it will come later. Now quick small question, why I'm not able to delete my pod? Whenever I delete it comes back online. Question, this is multi answer question. Okay, more than one answer might be correct. A B C D, pod is replica set, replica of one, A and B. So someone is saying A, someone is saying A and B. Okay, so most of the people have found the right answer. So it is A and B, right? So it is possible. Yeah, C is very interesting one, right? Pod is something that doesn't want to leave your cluster. It has to be there, and it happens. You will face this problem. That's why thought of mentioning it. So when you do kubectl run nginx, you'll get one pod running, right? If you delete that pod, let's see it. I mean, it will not take much time. Remember, I was telling this. So let's kubectl run in nginx. Nginx. Done. So when I don't mention any colon latest and all, it is latest by default. And there are so many images available now. Say get pod. See this nginx pod is running. So this is the name that I've given, and my image name is also same. My pod name is also same. Now let's try this. Do you think this will be deleted? Deleted. Sometimes it takes few seconds. Okay, so don't bother. Just wait. Done. Delete successful. Got pod. Nothing is coming. So it's like magician performing some magic and magic doesn't work. Okay. Why it is not working? Any idea? Okay, there is a thing called 1 minute. Huh? There is a thing called deployment, right? So there is no deployment created. Actually, when you do run, it might be kubectl magic, I don't know, but yeah, whenever you run this command kubectl run pod, it creates a deployment, okay, and that deployment comes with at least one replica set, right? And so when any pod is deleted, it will again come up. Now it did not create any deployment whatsoever. So that's why that pod is not coming, but it comes. I've seen it. Okie dokie. So answer is if you're using replica set or deployment, because that is the nature of this. What is the nature of replica set? Let's go a little faster. So we are halfway there. So replica set maintains a specific number of pods running at all times, right? So if I say replica equal to 2, it will ensure 2 pods are running. Deployment is next level. I have covered this. You can't change container image inside replica set. Replica set and pods are associated via labels. And the dangerous element of replica set is it can acquire pod that matches the label selector. So let's say I'm already running a pod with label web. Now I create this replica set and say replica is equal to 2. Now what it'll do, it will try to find out if any pod is already running with label app is web. Then it will say, okay, this guy is mine. I will maintain this. Okay, that will also be pulled here, and it will create one more because you asked for 2, right? So, and this might not be the intended behavior that you might be expecting. That's why I thought of mentioning it. Okay, you can also do horizontal pod autoscaler HPA using replica set. Okay, so where you can say if CPU utilization is this, I want it to auto scale and go up to 10. Okay, so that is auto scaling is also possible the way it happens in AWS. So let's run some commands. Okay, so this is the same thing, same is command that I was showing on that slide. We're going to run this. Done. Okay, replica set created. What it says desire was 2 because we mentioned 2, right? Current is 2 means it is already running 2 and both are in ready state. Let's see, right? So 2 pods are running and name of the pod will be your replica set name dash some random string. Now let's see the benefit of replica set. So let's say this pod got terminated because of some reason. This will surely work, unlike the previous examples. Come on. So just see, we have deleted a port 7H. Okay. Anyway, it is in the same screen, so you can always see. Now 7H is gone, but 4LTH7, some new one, it came almost immediately within 18 seconds. So this is self-healing, right? So replica set is ensuring that uh, if I'm saying I want this application with 10 replicas, it will ensure it is 10 all the time. If I'm saying 2, it will be 2. Now you keep on deleting it, keep deleting anyone, it will keep on creating. So deletion is not something that you will do in live system. It is just a simulation of a failure, any kind of failure, right? It is not able to get the image. It is not able to. Okay, again, I deleted the next one just to see. Okay, again, same is running. So that's a benefit of replica set. But replica set, as I mentioned before, you don't create replica set in real life because deployment is better concept than replica set. So command for deployment is similar, okay, but it has little more. So you see replica is equal to selector template. So it has a container pod template also inside it. Fine. Now what is deployment? And I think it's very important to understand deployment. It provides declarative updates for pod and replica sets. This is declarative way, right? And useful for upgrade, rollback, and scaling. Oh, I did not show you scaling of app. Let me show you that. So how do you scale the replica set? Uh, this is the command kubectl scale and whatever name you have. So again, this is manual way. So right now we are running this replica set with two. What is the name? AWS replica set. Okay. And next is how many replicas you want. Let's say I want 5. What should happen after running this command? There should be 5 pod running. This is very simple image. That's why it comes into running status almost immediately. Okay. Now you can scale down also. It is not like you can say scale up. You can do scale down also. It is scale to. I have scaled down to 1. Now it is terminating 4 because I said I want only 1. Okay. Now I can't delete this one because if I delete this, something will come up immediately because 1 has to be running. Okay. So after some time, you will see all 4 gone. All right. So that is how you scale. And same thing you can do in deployment. Now, deployment also allows you to upgrade. How do you upgrade? Very simple. Just if you see this command, all you need to do is in image section, you have this nginx colon latest. So whatever image you're running, you just you will have some version to it, right? So let's say your application is app and colon v1. Now you got v2 now in your repository. So you will say app colon v2. That's it, done. So when you say app colon v2, deployment controller will look for that kind of change and it will immediately start applying that v2 version of change. And how does it do it? So deployment internally creates a replica set. Okay, let's see how it looks. So quick okay, so first let's delete this replica set. Okay, so k get rs, short form for replica set, k delete rs, delete it. Okay, now we will create this deployment, web deployment. Now I'm doing exactly same thing with 2 pod. I want nginx to be deployed, but now it is happening through deployment. Done. Now let's see what happened as part of this. If I say deployment, it has created a deployment with the name that I have asked. Now, if I do get replica set, you'll see it has created a replica set also with a deployment name dash some string. And it is also showing that you asked for two, there are two. Okay. And obviously it would have created two pods, right? So just one command has done two things. It has created a replica set, it has created pod. And it is also ensuring that this desired state is always maintained. So that's another benefit. How do I modify? Just modify this Nginx to some other version. Let's say you can find out what all versions are there and you can put that. And it will change to different version. Again, you can delete that. In fact, this is another good thing. Let's run this command. Okay, so one guy has got this IP, one guy has got this IP. Now both are running in same node because this is single node cluster, and this is running on master node itself because our only node is this node, which is playing all the roles. So it is playing master node and it is worker node also because everything is getting scheduled here, right? So if you want to see where your pod is running, you can always check for this node. So if it was two node cluster, these two pod would have gone to two nodes. So this all automatically does load balancing. Okay, so if you scale it to 3, it will go to third node. If you have scale it to 4, fourth one will again go to node 1 and so on. Okay, and how does it do upgrade of application, right? I said you just need to change the you just need to change this image, right? So, and interesting part is it does not go. There are two strategy. One is recreate strategy. One is rolling upgrade strategy. Okay. So in rolling upgrade, what happens? It will ensure that your current state to desired state is changing at a controlled rate, right? So in other words, if you have an application running and you want to upgrade the application to next version, you can always shut down, ask for the outage, shut down that application, right? And implement new version, bring up the application. That's a very simple way, right? Now that requires downtime. Can I do that without downtime? Yes, you can do that using deployment. Put rolling upgrade as your strategy, right? Not recreate. Then what will happen? A deployment controller will change from current state to desired state at a control rate. By default, it ensures 75% of design number of pod are always up, right? So if you're running with 4 pod, okay, what it will do, it will first, so you're running a replica set, right? So it will create another replica set in parallel. Now I can't show all those demo, it will take a lot of time, but you can always log into kubernetes.io and check the examples, and I will also give you some more places from where you can get more samples. So how it does it, it will create another replica set in parallel, okay, and it will start scaling up that replica set. Okay, so if you say I want 4 pod in a replica set, you already have 4 pod running. So new replica set will be created with 1 pod. And as soon as that 1 pod is ready with version 2, 1 pod from your left side, the other replica set will be terminated. So then next, it will again get the second pod up here, second pod terminated, and so on. And slowly, and obviously once the new pod comes, all the connection to the previous pod will also be going to the new one. Okay, you can do all these things manually also by using the cordoning of the node, and also node upgrade can also be done. This is application upgrade, but let's say you want to do node upgrade. You have 3 worker node, and your applications, your pods are running in various nodes, right? How do I upgrade the node 1, right? You can cordon the node so that no new connection comes, and you can just empty the node, all the connection you can empty, and then you upgrade it, put it back in the cluster, and again it will start getting load. Okay, now there is an option of rolling back and in fact pausing of application also. Okay, so if there is a issue in rollout, right? So let's say, and you can do that, it's very easy. So Nginx colon, see, you can go to Nginx, let me show you, I think it will be very easy. If I say Nginx Docker image, go here. Okay, how do you do that? I'm just telling you. Nginx is one of the most popular image. Okay, so it has like 1 billion plus downloads. Billion, not millions. Okay, I have got very slow internet. See, 1 billion plus download. Okay, now what it says, supported tags and respective link. So when I don't mention any tag, latest is by default taken. So what it is doing, it is going to 117.10. Now I want to downgrade it to 117 Alpine version, which is lightweight version of anything is called Alpine. Okay, and so if I just mention colon Alpine, okay, then it will create one more. Replica set and it will keep on moving things to Alpine. Now, suppose this Alpine, I did a typo. So you can do that. You do typo, you write Alpine as something you write, which is wrong. There is no such image like Alpines, right? Then the new replica set will show one pod in pending state because it is not able to find the right image, which you are saying. And your four pod will consistently keep on running on your left. So your application is not impacted, right? And you can do pause because now you need to troubleshoot, right? So you can pause your deployment. There is a pause option also. You can pause it so that while you are doing all these changes and testing it, you don't want anything to happen. And then you test it, you see whether it is coming up fine, then you can resume that deployment and it will quickly upgrade. So that all those functionalities are there, and these are really good feature of it. So you can pause and you can roll back also. Suppose you upgraded to new version and after some time you can see the history also of all these applications, what all versions, what all things you have run. There is a record flag, you can enable that and it will record all the deployment changes. And so if you say something is wrong, I want to roll back, it's a simple rollback command to what version you want to go, just go to previous version, it will do that rollback. Okay, so from deployment concept you can do all this. Okay dokie, so let's go to services. Service, it helps in exposing application outside cluster, within cluster also. Three types of services. How do you create service? A simple example. You say this is my port 80. My container is running in port 80. Other way around. My container is running on port 3000 and I want to expose it to port 80. Right? Because I don't want user to remember. Let's say you're running Ruby on Rails application that runs on port 3000. Now, I don't want anyone to remember this colon 3000 all the time. He should be able to run from port 80 or port 443. So I can do this with this way. When user says web service colon 80, he will see this application. He doesn't need to see say colon 3000 because service will take care of converting from port 80 to 3000. And how does service work? So kubeproxy is the component that takes care of this. So kubeproxy will keep on sensing any new services getting created. Then it creates the corresponding IP table rules, right? So that, and rules with pod IP and all. Okay, and it will keep on modifying also. So if your pod is gone, new pod came, it will modify IP tables. So kubeproxy does all this work. There are three types of services: cluster IP, node port, load balancer. Okay, so cluster IP means you want to let's say you want to expose database server to web server, right? But you don't want that service to be exposed outside the cluster, then use cluster IP type. This is the default type. Then you want to expose your application at node port. So let's say I'm running a worker node with some IP. I want on that worker node IP port that application should be open, right? So here, if you see type is load balancer, this is third type. If you mention node port, what will happen? With the node, okay, so whatever is the node is instance 1. So if you do curl instance dash 1 colon 80, you will see this application output, you will see hello all. So that is node port type, right? If you create load balancer type, then it will do load balancing across all the worker node, right? If you have 3 worker, then all the services, all the hits that will come to the service will go to all 3 nodes. Okay, so service is quite big concept like deployment. You should do a lot of practice. And very important point is how service knows about pod. It knows about pod from this selector. Okay, so whatever selector you're giving here, the same selector should be there in the pod. And that's how these two know about each other, right? You don't give any pod name. You're not saying for this pod name, I am creating this service. You're just giving a selector. So selector these label selector is the way you select the labels, but with these labels actually you connect different things. So like pod to service, pod to replica set, pod to deployment, everything is connected through labels. Okay, so very important to have same labels. Okay, now the storage part. So what is volume? So persistent volume is not same as volume. So volume is common concept that you might have seen before. So volume is a directory, right? And you create volumes. You can create volume in AWS, EBS, so many places. Locally also you can create. Now, why do you create storage? Obviously, you want to save the data. You want to persist the data. Now, there is a concept called PV, persistent volume, which is a Kubernetes term. So it refers to the volume that is managed by Kubernetes. So you don't need any volume manager actually. So volume manager work is done by Kubernetes itself, and Kubernetes calls it persistent volume, PV. How do you create it? You just type is persistent volume, see the case sensitive thing, P capital, V capital. So it follows camel case. Then what is the capacity? How it should be mounted? Should it be read write once, read write many, and all that? What should be the reclaim policy? Should it be so? If my pod is deleted, which was using this, if pod is deleted, what should happen? Should I reclaim, recycle? There are few options here. Retain, recycle, two options. What is the storage class name? This is defining various type of storage. Again, you can give whatever name you want. How it should be mounted? What should be the path of it? Right, on which server? So this is how you define persistent volume. Now persistent volume is used with the help of PVC. So you don't mount PV, okay, you mount PVC. You mount through PVC. So in your pod, let's say I have a MySQL pod, okay, I want to use the volume that I created using this. So I create a volume, right, persistent volume of 30 GB, read write once, I created this, and it will use default storage class wherever. So in Minikube, only one storage class is supported, which is host path, nothing else. But if you have your own cluster, you can install Chef, or you can have NFS and whatnot. In okay, sorry, I'm going Shankar Mahadevan breathless way. So okay, so this is how you use it. You see, there are two commands: volume mount. So you give whatever name you want to give, and how you want to mount it. Where live MySQL. This is the folder. Any name you want to give, right? And the mount name should match with your volume detail, and it should match with some PV that you have already created. So if you use some, let's say, managed service provider, let's say you're using EKS, then you don't need to create PV. PV is taken care by AWS. If you're using Chef Rook operator, then PV is created automatically. You just mention PVC and PV is created. So you remember, if you are using Chef, you will not see any PV creation script because that is taken care by it. Okay, dokie, let's move on to config map. Config map, as I said, it is just to save the variable, right? So this is one simple example. For web server, I want to connect web server to database server. How do I connect? I have to give the environment variable, right? What is my database name, username, host name? Simple way I can do like this, right? I can put these four variable in my web pod itself, or I can put it in config map. But even this is not right way because DB password is clearly visible here, right? So if you do describe config map, you can see this value. So you want to hide it. How do you hide it? You create, I'm just skipping this. You create a secret. Secret is like config map only to store variable values, but you give values in base 64 encoding format. How do you convert your value? Just do echo and your value colon separator base 64. It will give you corresponding base 64 value. Put it here. Done. But other way around is also possible. You put this value back and you can also decode it if you know. So that's why secrets are safe, but not 100% safe also, right? So there are certain best practices about secret. You always use secret as mounts, right? And mount is handled differently. So value is not actual. Value is actual password. So let's say your password is password. You say echo dash hyphen password. base 64, it will give you some string like this. Okay. And whatever I have given is all wrong value. It will not translate to anything meaningful. Okay. So again, secrets are not 100% secure. So you have to use some vault or something on top of it. Stateful set are good. As I said, I think I covered stateful set before. Uh, Deployment or replica set are good for stateless application, but if you want to ensure the order or the name of pod and all, because if it is 3 tier, you want, right, your database tier pod should come first, then middle tier. Now you can't do that in your pod world, right? Pod, when you say deployment, it will try bringing up all and it will fail, right? And that is not the desired behavior you want. So this order is followed in stateful set. Daemon set has another benefit. Daemon set ensures that at least one copy runs on all the nodes. So if you have 2 node cluster, 3 node cluster, your daemon set related pod will run on all the clusters all the time. Okay, it will ensure that. And why do you need that? You want it for cluster storage daemon. So if you configure chef, right, chef rook operator, then that rook operator will be configured as daemon set. Or you want to do some monitoring, Prometheus based monitoring or some monitoring, or you want to do log collection. You want that pod to be running on all the node all the time, right? And so it should be like first in and last out kind of pod, right? Monitoring. So if my node is down, right, and when node comes up, I want my monitoring pod to come up first, so that all other things can be monitored. And when my node down goes down because it is running out of memory or whatever, your daemon set should be the last one to go out, right? Because that is essential one. So it will keep on kicking out all, but it will ensure daemon set is not kicked out as long as it can, right? So those are the rules that it follows, and these are the typical use cases, and it makes sense also, right? You cannot implement all this manually. Now connecting the dots. So many things we have learned. How do you practice it? How do you use all these concepts? So a quick small assignment kind of thing for yourself. Create a 2 tier application, okay, web and DB tier. Use Nginx and MySQL. Figure out how to run Nginx, how to run MySQL, how to create a web deployment and all that. And the requirement is that application should be accessible from port 80, whereas containers should run on 8080. Application should have self-healing. It should have a scaling capability. Configuration should not be stored inside pod, right? Data should be encrypted. The password part. Rolling upgrade with zero time should be allowed. Rollback, pausing, all this be allowed. And you have to showcase it also. What all things will you use here? Will you use pod? No, you will not use pod because you will use deployment, right? Because deployment will create pod, and that too in high availability mode. You will create PV, PVC, label selector, all these 7 things you will use, and you have to follow certain order also. What will be the order? Obviously, you have to create things which are used later, right? So secrets, PV, PVC will be used in deployment. So those should be created first. Now there is no particular order that uh, so there is a question, how do I run one node on one pod on one node? There is a node affinity thing also. There is taint toleration concept also. Very interesting concept. You can figure out taint and toleration and node affinity. Together with these 2, 3 concepts, you can ensure uh, pod running on particular node and so on, because your node might not be of same size, right? Some might be big, some might be small. You want powerful resource hungry application to run on big. How do you ensure that? Because by default it will take it to anywhere. So yeah, you have those concepts you can find. Previous slide, solution component. So I was just showing that what all things will be required to do this case study. Now this is all theoretical, right? I'm not, except for pod, I'm not talking about any other concept. So you have to use pod, secret, services, deployment, PV, PVC, label selector, all these concepts you have to use. And you have to create these objects in this particular order. I don't need to do this mapping, you know that. Okay, so this is your assignment, 2 tier app similar to the case study, and show the steps required. Now, some useful link before we go to question answer. So, first one, Red Hat developer demos, github.io. You can open these. You will get the PPT. You'll get everything. Cube. Most important one is of course this one. This is this Kubernetes, GitHub, Cube Labs, and Kubernetes by example. A lot of examples are given with practical scenarios, and also these two are very good. Even the first one is also very good. And whenever you have any doubt, go to this kubernetes.io. Okay, that will give answer to everything. You just put your question in search and you will get it. All right, so we are towards the end of it. Just want to highlight this. These two-part masterclass is just tip of the iceberg. What you have seen is just so the top one that you have seen in masterclass, that is just the tip. Kubernetes is what you don't see right now. Okay, so it is very complicated, complex. I think day one also I said that, but my objective was to give you a solid platform, solid foundation, so that you can start this journey actually, right? Just the tip of the iceberg, and let's take some question now.
I think Abhinivesh, we have questions in the chat. If you can just take them random.
Yes.
Abhi, you will be sharing recording for this
Yes.
and
Yes,
PPT.
we are going to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
And part one recording, I'm reading bottom up. So part one recording link was there in invitation of this part two, right, Jace?
Yeah, it was there.
Ah.
Yeah, it's in the meetup invitation as well.
All right. So next question is, if I have an app running on port 80, the port is mapped at node level, three pods running on three nodes. If one of the node dies, the pod will be rescheduled to healthy node. But the node is having the port already mapped. Obviously, that is the limitation of node port. That's why you never use node port. In fact, imagine you have two applications that you want to run on port 80. How will you run? No way, right? Because port 80 will be already in use. So you go with node. Uh, sorry, you go with services. What services and load balancer concept and all, and node port is given in the range of just a small correction on my statement. You don't run on port 80 and all, you run it on node, you run it using node port, which is wider range. It is start from 30,000 to 32,767, something like that. Okay, so you use node port, you don't run on 80 for sure. Okay, if you're running on 80, you are having all these problems. Recording will be shared to next. So if you have two nodes and replica set is set as two, or by default it will take care. No need to worry. It will schedule one on one, other one on other one. I covered that. What if I use a solution like Gardener? I did not understand that question, but see, different kind of storages are supported, and there is a concept called CSI, Container Storage Interface. So you need to have CSI plugin for it. So as long as CSI plugin is there, it will work. And Kubernetes documentation shows you huge list of uh, storage that are supported. Okay. All common ones are already there. For upgrade, we need to first update the template, then this deployment takes that updated version. Yeah, you can do this. I think in case study, I've mentioned that you should try to mimic those scenarios, right? You try to see how I'm pausing it. And all these step-by-step things are given in kubernetes.io website. And there is no time and no point actually to copy paste and run those, right? You will not learn anything. You have to do that. What is the default replication factor is 1. So if you don't mention anything, it is 1. Okay, so I'll quickly, how can we manage DR kind of scenario with one pod? Obviously for DR you need more than one, right? So if you put replicas at 1 and 1 is gone, your next one will be created immediately, but how much time next one will take will depend on what kind of image you have, how heavy it is, and whether your images are going to be pulled automatically or reused, and all those things will come into picture. So let's say your pod creation takes 2 minutes, then that means you have outage of 2 minutes, even if in this setup. So always have at least two pods, replica set as two minimum. Agree? Someone reply to that. Kubernetes system object will go into kube system. Yes, that is correct. It will go in public or some goes in public, and there is a namespace D flag also that can tell you namespace D equal to true false. That tells you what are the objects that don't go inside namespace. There was one quiz question also. If I don't mention, yes, that is correct. Everything goes in default. This is also correct statement. Namespaces are used for managing resources efficiently because you don't want a noisy neighbor problem. One guy comes and runs some heavy pod, uses all the memory, and you're gone, right? All other people will keep on waiting. You don't want that thing to happen. So
Okay, I think
yeah, I think we have 2 minute
we have
over.
covered everything.
Yeah, mostly I covered it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you, Abhinivesh. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending this masterclass, and thank you, Jayesh and AWS User Group, for organizing this. Hope this was useful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhinivesh, and
Thanks.
thanks participant. We'll share the link
Avi,
and the recording.
do we have any more sessions?
Yeah.
Upcoming weeks or days?
So as of now, it's not planned, but yeah, we definitely will plan based upon the feedback, and we will update our meetup page with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.